What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Season 2 of Chop It Up as we get underway here for Week 1 of college football. We have a loaded episode for you guys today. We're going to get into Ohio State and Texas, Arch Manning's poor performance, LSU and Clemson in a really close game last night, and give you an update on a couple other games that are wrapping up today as well. As we're recording this, we have Notre Dame and Miami just kicking off right now. But before we get into any of that, let's go over a few updates from last time you guys saw me on an episode here. We're going to be making some adjustments this season. As you can see, the setup's different. I'm in a new location down here in Southern Oregon, going to Southern Oregon University. And a lot of these episodes are going to be featuring my roommate, good friend of the show, Hunter Fullerton. We're going to be able to get his insight, his opinion, his hot takes, all of that good stuff on the show pretty frequently. So stay tuned for that. I'm really excited to see how that dynamic between him and I goes. And then also on top of that, be sure to go follow us on social media. We're all over the place. We had some really good coverage this summer from the USA Track and Field Championships. A lot of that is on Instagram and TikTok. So be sure to go follow us there. On those social media platforms, it's really going to be short clips, snippets, interviews, things like that. And then on YouTube and Spotify, let me repeat that, YouTube and Spotify, that's going to be where our full episodes are. So if you're looking for last year's stuff, if you're looking to go and find something stupid that I said on an episode last year, it's going to be on YouTube and Spotify. So be sure to go subscribe, like the show, rate it 5 stars, all that good stuff. And stay tuned because we're making some adjustments. As you can see, we're in a little bit of a transition period. But I'm really excited to see what this season has for us, not just for the show, but also in college football. So without further ado, let's get into that. Week 1 kicked us off. Number 1 Texas on the road taking on the Buckeyes, the defending national champions. Really highly anticipated game. You got Arch Manning making his first real start, let's put it like that. And then Ohio State, a lot of turnover. They lost a ton of guys. Julian Sayin, the starting quarterback, how's he going to look? He has Jeremiah Smith. He has Carnell Tate. Anytime Ohio State and Texas, square off, there's going to be a lot of talent on the field. But because it's the first game of the season, we don't know what these rosters are going to look like. Obviously, there's every 4-star and 5-star under the sun playing at the Shoe this weekend, but we don't know what these teams are going to look like. And we saw that with Arch Manning, a guy that is in the Heisman running, a guy that people thought was just instantly going to come in and light things up. Well, he didn't do that. Arch had a rough one. He was 17 of 30, 170 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. And it was rough. It was really ugly. If you watched the game, you saw that he had a lot of missed throws. It wasn't just like he was rattled. He just couldn't complete passes. In the first half especially, Sark wasn't really opening up the playbook. So it wasn't like Arch was having to make these super tough reads and fit the ball in these super tight windows. It was none of that. He just couldn't complete simple throws. And as a relatively young quarterback, or in Arch's case, just inexperienced quarterback, one of the most important things early in the game is to find your rhythm with your receivers, with the run game. And they couldn't do any of that. I thought Texas' run game was actually okay. But the reason that it wasn't as explosive as I thought it would be is because they're one-dimensional. They can't throw the ball. And we all know if you can't throw the ball effectively, you're not really going to be able to run the ball effectively. And we saw that with Texas. Now, all over social media, of course, you're going to see, is Arch overrated? Is he really not that good? Arch Manning's going to be fine. He went in to the home of the defending national champions, who obviously still have a really good defense despite the talent they lost to the NFL draft. And people were expecting him to throw for 1 million yards and 18 touchdowns and look like his uncle in his prime, both of his uncles in his prime for that matter. That's not going to happen. Let's be realistic. It's a long season. Texas has a ton of winnable games left. They play in the SEC. So let's pump the brakes on the Arch hate for now after talking about how great he's going to be to start off the season. Yes, it was ugly. Yes, I did not expect to see that from Arch, but he's going to be fine. Let's talk about Ohio State here for a minute. Ohio State. Should probably finish that off with a T. Matt Patricia put on a clinic on the defensive end of things. Like I said, in the NFL draft, these guys lost Jack Sawyer, JTT on the other side of the defensive line. They lost Lathan Ransom in the secondary, who is really the leader of that Ohio State defense. And they just replaced it with absolute studs. They were getting after Arch. They were in the backfield. Their secondary, I was really impressed with. And their secondary is a little bit more experienced. They have Igbenogson, who came back for another year. They have Caleb Downs, who's probably the best defensive player in all of college football. So I wasn't super shocked at the fact that Ohio State's secondary was really playing to a high level. But it was just the fact that how they played as a unit this early in the season. I think you're going to see this Ohio State team rely on their defense to make plays a little bit more rather than last year's team where you have Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins and Will Howard. You can just go run up the scoreboard. Yes, they still have playmakers on the offensive end, but because you bring in Julian Sayin, a young quarterback, he's going to have to be a little bit more reliant on his weapons and on his defense in order for Ohio State to have success. And that's what we saw. I actually thought Sayin was okay. Yes, he was a game manager. He didn't go in and light things up, but I didn't expect that from him. And if you did, then I don't really know what you were thinking, to be honest. I mean, this guy just got announced as a starting quarterback 2 weeks ago. So he didn't have a ton of time to really get accustomed and get his mind used to the fact that he's going to be a starting quarterback in the biggest game of the season in week 1. Similar to Arch, you can't expect him to go in here and just be throwing the ball around like it's week 10. You know, something that fans I don't think understand, especially this early in the season, and this goes for all teams, the defense is going to be ahead of the offense because of the fact that defenses are normally going live in the offseason. They're able to make tackles. They're able to make plays. No, they can't sack the quarterback in training camp, but they're able to get their schemes and implement them a little bit easier. Whereas the offense, it's about timing. It's about getting guys in the right places, making sure the quarterback's taking the right amount of steps in his drop, the receiver's cutting off its route at the right time. That takes time to develop. You're not going to see a team come out in week 1 and light up the scoreboard in a super intense, highly anticipated matchup. That's why Ohio State and Texas was low scoring. That's why Clemson and LSU was low scoring. That's why this Notre Dame-Miami game that I'm watching right now is pretty ugly. Also, Carson Beck's not that good, so that plays another reason. But what I'm trying to tell you is that in week 1, when you have these crazy matchups, yes, it's awesome to watch these teams duke it out to kick off the season. But also you have to understand that things are going to be a little ugly because these offenses are still trying to find their rhythm. Nevertheless, I thought this was an awesome win for Ohio State. Both these teams are going to be fine. I think they're both going to be in the playoff. But with that being said, huge momentum for Ryan Day to pick up a big win, his second win over Texas in like the last 5 or 6 months. And I think Texas is still going to be a really good team, despite the fact that everyone decided to hop off the Arch bandwagon. So good win there for the Buckeyes nonetheless. Let's get into LSU Clemson, the nightcap last night, Battle of the Tigers, the fight for Death Valley, whatever you want to call it. This one was a little sloppy, and I think really the biggest thing about this game was the defenses on both sides. I talked about in my picks on Friday night, which ended up being absolutely terrible, that the biggest question marks were on defense. Both these defenses last year were rated outside the top 50 in total defense. So that tells you that they weren't great and that for programs like LSU and like Clemson, that's unacceptable. You can't have poor defensive play year in and year out and expect to have great success. So what do Brian Kelly and Dabo Swinney go do? They go recruit. They go bring guys through the portal. Dabo Swinney brings in Tom Allen, former defensive coordinator at Penn State, brings him into Clemson. Brian Kelly goes and gets a bunch of talent through the portal and develops some of his young talent that he had on last year's defensive squad as well. And so I think that's why you saw this game just be a bloodbath so early on, despite the fact that you have Garrett Nussmeier at quarterback and Cade Klubnik, two experienced veteran starting quarterbacks that people thought were going to go off in this game. That's why you saw them struggle a little bit, because these defenses stepped up in great ways, whether it was scheming or just raw talent. I think this was the most surprising part of the game. I talked about it once again in my predictions. I thought that these two offenses were going to be running up the score. I thought you were going to see Klubnik go for 350 and a couple tuds. I thought you were going to see Nussmeier airing it out all over the field. And we just didn't see that. And so as much as I think Nussmeier and Klubnik will still have a lot of success this season, it was really interesting to see this game play out. And then late in the game, it just felt like Clemson didn't have anyone to get the ball to. And immediately when I saw this happen, because in the first quarter, they lose Antonio Williams, their star wide receiver. So then you think, okay, Clemson, they should be fine. They have a lot of talent. How are they going to adjust the rest of the game? Well, they didn't score a touchdown after Antonio Williams got hurt and left. So that tells you exactly what you need to know about this Clemson offense. They just didn't have guys step up, whether it was in the run game or the passing game. They only had like 33 yards rushing, I think, and then they just didn't have any receivers step up. And so the question for me was, is this year's Clemson team going to be similar to last year's Penn State team where you have pretty solid quarterback playing Drew Aller? Clemson might not have the run game that Penn State had last year, but the common denominator is a lack of skill at the wide receiver position. Last year, Penn State just didn't have a number one guy that you could throw to and was going to go out and make plays. And Clemson looked really similar to that last night. Klubnik was rattled. He was having to throw off of his platform, constantly scrambling. And it just didn't seem like there was a go-to guy that he could find throughout that second half in crunch time. And credit to LSU on this win. This was a game that, despite it being week one, it felt like LSU had to win it, right? I mean, you look at the history of Brian Kelly and the history of this Tigers program, they had lost 5 straight season openers. And you say, okay, well, credit to them for having the cojones to go play really good teams in week one. Well, part of that goes with winning big games in week one, like Ohio State did. Well, LSU just hasn't been able to do that, and finally they catch their big break. I thought their red zone defense was really good. Obviously, they only hold Clemson to 10 points. I think this Clemson offense is pretty legit. And so to see this LSU team take something that was so bad last year with their defense and have it look like it could be a top 5, top 10 defense in the country this season was really impressive, because you know Nussmeier is going to continue to heat up, build that chemistry with his offense, and you know that LSU run game, and I actually thought they were pretty good last night. The numbers aren't going to say that they ran it all over Clemson, but I thought it was very complimentary to how they were throwing the ball as well. And so I think that, with Nussmeier, he's going to continue to play at a high level. And even last night, like, he wasn't bombing it around the field, but he took care of the ball. He didn't throw an interception. They did have 2 fumbles, but that's not his fault. That's on the receivers for not being able to take care of the ball. And so credit to LSU. This is a big win. And one of the things that I think is interesting, especially about the 12-team playoff now, is when you win these big games early in the year, especially in non-conference matchups, it kind of gives you a bigger margin for error as the year goes on. Obviously, this doesn't mean Brian Kelly goes into the locker room last night and goes, all right, guys, we beat Clemson. We can go lose 3 SEC conference games. Now, that's not how that works. But when you look at LSU's schedule, it's brutal. They have Florida at home. They go on the road to Ole Miss. They have South Carolina at home, A&M at home, and then they go on the road to Bama and OU to finish out the season. Now, those are all really tough games. Those are all ranked opponents right now, so we'll see how that plays out for LSU. But if they would have lost last night, now you're behind the 8 ball, and you have to go play 6 or 7 ranked teams in conference play, and that's just insane, and that's what you get in the SEC most of the time. So credit to LSU. It was a big win. They retain the Death Valley name. I know there's a lot of controversy about that this weekend, but credit to LSU for getting it done. That was a fun game, and Clemson's going to be fine as well. That's kind of do it for our game recaps. Let's get over a few hot topics that will wrap up this week 1 episode. The first one's Kalen DeBoer. Is he already on the hot seat? I'm going to say yes, and that I know you guys are already going to say, you're just hating because you're a Washington homer and he left you guys in the dust. Well, yeah, he did do that. He's also lost to 4 unranked teams since being at Alabama. Since Kalen DeBoer arrived in Tuscaloosa, he has more losses to unranked opponents than he does to ranked opponents. That's not a stat that Bama fans love, especially when that means you have 4 losses to teams that were unranked when you played them. Listen, I did not like what I saw from Alabama last night at all. It's one thing to lose a game in week 1, and maybe Florida State's good. Maybe Thomas Castellanos and Mike Norvell have this thing really figured out. But it wasn't like, oh man, Alabama lost, but they still look really good. It was, oh man, Alabama looks atrocious. Ty Simpson didn't have it. I know there was a lot of hype around him being Saban's last prodigy and all this weird stuff. He was awful. they showed at the beginning of the broadcast that, oh, Miami just scored a touchdown. They showed at the beginning of the broadcast that, he was the number 2 dual threat quarterback coming out of high school. I'm not sure whoever put that ranking together still has a job because he was awful with his legs. He had opportunities to make plays either on the run or throwing to receivers downfield outside the pocket, and just awful throws. He had a missed throw to Ryan Williams, I think it was, on like a 4th and 6, rolled out to his left. All he had to do was just throw a crossbody 7 yards to the boundary. Completely underthrew him. His arm talent was subpar to say the least. And if Alabama is going to make a quarterback change 5 or 6 weeks into the season, I'm not going to be surprised by that because of how bad Ty Simpson was. I'm not saying it's time to sound the alarm quite yet because it is week 1. But if this level of play continues and you see Alabama stumble in the next 3 to 4 weeks, there are going to be people within the Alabama athletic department that are going to start having those conversations of firing Kalen DeBoer. He doesn't have, the alumni behind him or this love. Like, he's not from Alabama. He's not a former player. He's this guy from South Dakota that came and built a program on the West Coast in Washington, had really fast success in 2 years, and then tried to fill the shoes of the greatest college football coach of all time, and people just thought he was immediately going to pick up where Saban left off. 1, that's not going to happen, and 2, Kalen DeBoer hasn't even come close to that. So he's going to have to turn things around there real quick, or else the tide is going to turn on Kalen DeBoer, and that's not something that we all want to see, even though I personally would not mind seeing that. Let's get into the NFL a little bit, and then we'll get up on out of here for hopefully around a 20-minute episode, which is what we want to try to do. Get you guys these shorter episodes that you can get through, get your information, get entertained, and then go on about your day. Micah Parsons traded to the Packers probably a week ago at this point, and listen, I wish Hunter was here because he is a diehard Cowboys fan. It'd be really fun to pick his brain and just get his thoughts. I talked to him, not a happy guy. If you know Hunter, might want to send him a text, might want to check in on him because it was a real struggle. But Jerry Jones ships off Micah Parsons for 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark, who is a decent defensive tackle, but I'm pretty sure if he's not 30 already, he's 29, like he's an aging defensive tackle. And those 2 first-round picks that you're going to get from Green Bay, those aren't going to be anything special because the Packers are going to be really, really good. I'm talking Super Bowl contending good now. And that's coming out of the NFC North, where they have to play the Lions and the Vikings and the Bears twice a year. That's going to be a really fun division. But the Packers are set. And for Jerry Jones to come out in this press conference and say just these idiotic things, we need to stop the run. We felt like this was what's best for the team and still having success. We're still trying to win. No, you're not, because if you were still trying to win, you would have signed the greatest linebacker in football right now. I understand that Micah didn't handle it the right way. I don't agree with laying on the table at a preseason game. I don't agree with holding out in general. I think it's a completely bogus move. But at the end of the day, if you're worried about winning, you sign your best players. You threw the cash at Dak Prescott, who is the most overpaid quarterback maybe in the history of football, especially at the quarterback position. You threw the bag at CD. You trade for George Pickens. So you make these moves that tell your fan base, let's win now, let's win now, let's win now. And then you don't sign your best player on the team. It makes 0 sense whatsoever. I don't understand this move, and I can't emphasize that enough. Not to mention, you don't even get that much back. You get 2 first-round picks. I would have tried to trade as much. If I was Jerry Jones, I would have said, give me the maximum amount of first-round picks for Micah Parsons, or you're not getting him because he's that good. He can impact the team that much. And now if you're the Packers, before you make this trade, you say, okay, we got Jordan Love. We bring in Matthew Golden. The offense is going to be good. Defense should be pretty solid. And we're just going to go contend. We're in a tough division. We have to play the Lions twice. We have the Vikings. The Bears look like they're going to be somewhat solid this season. And now you get the best linebacker in football. He falls into your lap, and you're thinking, we're going to go to the Super Bowl. And they're not wrong for thinking that. I mean, when you looked at their matchup against the Eagles last year in the playoffs, it was absolutely abysmal. Their defense got eaten alive. and now you add a talent like Micah Parsons, you get younger in the secondary. This Packers team is going to be dangerous, and I think it's probably a Super Bowl favorite in the NFC, and that's with the Eagles. Like, if I had to make a prediction right now, I would say, if the Packers are in the Super Bowl in February, I'm not going to be surprised. But just an absolutely brutal time to be a fan in the Dallas area. I mean, a year ago, you have the Mavericks coming off a finals run, and you have Luka Doncic, and the Cowboys look like they're somewhat trending in the right direction. I don't even know if I'd go that far, but at least you have some talent. You have some things to be excited about. And you fast forward 365 days, and Luka Doncic and Micah Parsons are both ran out of town by just idiotic moves. And this is what makes me so mad about sports, is that when you have these owners who have been in the business for a million years and they're just going to rot at their desk, and they think they know everything because they won 5 Super Bowls in 1912, and they think that they can just go out and make these moves and it's going to work because the NFL is the same now as it was back when they first started. That's not the case. If you're Jerry Jones, you have to put your ego aside and be like, okay, Micah, you're being kind of a wuss right now, and we are going to pay you because you matter that much to this team. You can't be in a face-off against a guy, and then when he stands 10 toes down and says, no, I want my money or I'm not going to show up, then you're screwed, because then you ship him off, then you have to go to the media, and especially to Cowboys fans, who are maybe one of the more brutal fan bases in the NFL, and try and defend yourself for trading the best player in defense on the best defensive player in football. Like, that's just not going to work. So, frustrating move for Cowboy fans there. I feel bad for them to a point. Part of me doesn't feel bad for them because it's the Cowboys. But that is pretty much going to wrap it up for this first episode of Chop It Up. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Be sure to stay tuned because Hunter's going to be back soon. We're going to get this thing rolling. We're going to have our weekly pick'ems. We're going to have thoughts once the NFL gets going. These episodes are going to be really loaded. We have some exciting guests that we're trying to get in the works, so should be excited to get some new faces on here. Hopefully some current athletes, former athletes, and maybe some familiar names for some of you viewers out there. So that is going to wrap it up. We hope you enjoyed week 1 of college football. The NFL will be back next week, so stay tuned for that. Be sure to follow, subscribe, do all the things on all the social media platforms, and we will see you guys very soon.